Hey everyone, today we are talking about cartwheels, and cartwheels are a weight transfer. And the thing I want you to really understand about a cartwheel, I think the key important point is that just like rolling, cartwheels follow some of the very same principles. It's just kind of like rolling on your hands and feet instead of rolling, over your body essentially. And so understanding how you transition from feet to hands and hands to feet and how that movement works is going to determine how successful you are with the cartwheel. The other thing about a cartwheel is we're getting into now what real tumbling is. Rolling kind of had a piece of this, which is there's this linear momentum, the straight line, the direction that the cartwheel is traveling, and the center of mass has to move a certain distance. And so that linear momentum is key to understanding how you're going to use the cartwheel to generate enough power for the skill. And then there's the angular momentum, and that's the circling action of the cartwheel. And how well you're going to turn that cartwheel over is also going to determine what you're going to do with it. And then there's the shape changing. And in cartwheels, there's not a lot of shape changing, but there is some. And the shape changing is also going to determine how you basically are loading the system and then releasing so that you can pull the center of mass along, kind of like a slingshot. And so that's a lot of this shape changing, is figuring out how to create this tension and this movement that pulls the center of mass along. So let's jump right in. So the first images we got here are, if you look at the giant blue circle, there's a smaller blue circle in the center. That center is, we're going to just pretend is the center of mass. The orange arrow is telling us which direction the circle is traveling. Now in image number 1, the orange block is pretty high, which means that the circle would have to be pushed with a lot of force to overcome the obstacle. If you go to the image number 2, the orange block is a little bit lower, so it requires less force. You get to image number 3, there's going to be less force. It's easier to overcome the obstacle. If you go to image number 4, there is no obstacle in the way, and so it's incredibly easy to overcome the obstacle. What you need to understand is that the orange block is a representation of where your hand or foot placement is in relationship to your center of mass. And so if the contact point is further away from your center of mass, then it's a lot closer to being like the image number 1, where the contact point is bigger and it takes more to overcome. So you're hopefully going to understand this. It's a lot like running technique, because cartwheeling is just learning how to run over your hands and feet in a circle. So you go to the green side and it becomes easier to turn over, and that means to invert or to create a circle. If you put your hands closer to the red arrows, it will become more difficult to turn over. So if you look at A, B, C, the closer you place your hands to C, the easier it is going to be to circle your body. The closer you place your hands to the number 3, the more difficult it will become to circle your body. So going back to this image, the number 1 is very much related to like the number 3 in this picture, because you're stopping yourself. Your center of mass is far away from the contact point, and the center of mass has to overcome the distance of the obstacle. And so that's how it relates. And number 4 in this picture is very close to the arrow C. It's very easy to turn over when you can kind of move the whole entire body into itself. This is what a front aerial or a side aerial technique is used, is really just moving to arrow C. Okay, so cartwheel entry. There's a couple ways to enter a cartwheel, and you can get as creative as you want to. The main thing is how you enter the cartwheel will determine how much power is going to be generated. So you have the lever. It's a pretty traditional way to enter a cartwheel. You have the piked version. This allows you to get your upper body into the surface faster and then kick over. So there's a little bit more rotation that happens because you're a smaller body, and then you use your legs to kick over. The kneeled lunge is just an example of how to make something a little bit more difficult, more tricky. So if you need some variety to make them move their body more, or you want them to have to move more center of mass, then do it from a kneeled lunge. Okay, so I want to bring up the runner's pose in the whole process, because remember, the body is in front of the contact point. It is pushing through the surface. This is where it weights the surface. And then it is moving the center of mass a distance. It's reaching for the ground. So the foot is now reaching for the ground, but we're not trying to put weight on the foot, and we pass over. This is where we make contact weight. So right here, if you're to put weight on that foot, like all your weight on it, then you'd be stopping yourself from traveling over it. And in other videos, we would call this, we'll talk about it later, but we call this an early block. You don't want to create an early block because early blocks stop you. You want to create a late block, which is blocking later after you travel over the contact point. So again, I want you to see that you're falling, that the center of mass is past the contact point. It's being moved a certain distance, and that distance has to carry through to there. So we're really moving it from here to there, okay? And you can kind of see a similarity in the angle. So there's shapes that have to happen. So check out the side cartwheel. All right, so you have the image number 1. There is an even distribution of weight on both legs. You get to image number 2. The body is now falling and the weight is on one leg. You get to image number 3, and now the hand is being placed down. You go to image number 4. Okay, so the hand makes contact with the surface in image number 4. That hand is stopping the body from traveling. So the leg kicking has to overcome the hand. All right. So the lower half of the body has to overcome the upper half. You get to image number 5. Now you can't balance in that position, so you're traveling over that hand. You get to image number 6. You do not want to stop there, because that hand touching the ground in image number 6, again, is just stopping you. That's a balancing position. So you need to travel over that hand. So to get to, you need to really go from 5 to 7. 6 just has to happen. So you're not trying to be in 6. You're trying to go from 5 to 7. All the weight on one arm, all the weight on another arm. Then you get to 8. This is a falling action. The weight is transferring from the hands to the feet, and it needs to actually move really fast, because when you get to 9, the standing up, it gets a little bit trickier here. It's actually not as easy to stand up as most people would imagine, and this is where they get into trouble, is from 9 to 10, and then you lose a lot of quality there because the fall is not fast enough to pull the upper body up. So from 7 to 8, people tend to slow down instead of continue the momentum. Then you have 9, 10, 11. 11's in a freezing phase. So if you look at number 4, okay, number 4, the hand touching the surface is stopping the center of mass. So you're going from your feet to your foot to your hand, and that's a lot like as if you're to place your hand down on the ground and it's in front of your center of mass and it's stopping you. So that's what number 4 is doing. So that's why it's important to get from 3 really all the way to 7, because you always want the center of mass on the opposite side of the contact point, or in the direction of the late block, so the center of mass is past the contact point. You want it to be in a constant state of fall. And so that's what makes cartwheeling tricky, because really 3 is falling, 4 is stopping the fall, 5 is rising over, 6 is a balancing position, so 7 is initiating the fall again, 8 is falling, 9 is no longer falling, it's rising, 10 is not really falling, it's coming into a balanced position. So 3 and 7 are the key factors that you're really aiming for. All right, so lunge cartwheel. So a side cartwheel, just so we're clear, is facing, let's say you're just facing a wall and you're moving sideways, placing your hands and feet, versus a lunge cartwheel, you're facing the direction of travel, and then the body turns to side in the inversion, and then it twists out and finishes facing the direction you came. Now, I'm not showing the starts as much as just understanding that there's these transitional shapes. You'll see there's an image that says lever, and then there's the number 1. There's a couple ways to enter into a cartwheel, and it depends on how you're using it. But the main thing to understand is the smaller the shape you can become, like the number 1, and get into the surface, then the faster the rotation is going to be, which is not always a good thing. The lever action actually has more kick, so that might be something you want if you're doing aerials, but it may not be something you want if you're doing round-offs and trying to generate power. You might see more of a piked or a closed something to create rotation and then be more delayed in the kick. Now, again, we have, if we look at number 3, we can see that there's kind of this awkwardness happening in the shoulders because you have actually one arm, and I'm going to come out of this so you can see. So this arm's actually reaching for the surface, and this arm is actually trying to get the center of mass past it as quick as possible. So this arm is going to actually be stopping you. So you're trying to get from here to 5. So 3 to 5. You're trying to go from 3 to 5 as fast as possible so that you can get over this arm and get into this position and start falling. And so there's kind of a shoulder movement, a shoulder action that has to happen to get the body to transition over from 3, 4 to 5 and then fall again. And this is really the difficulty of cartwheeling, is to just maintain a constant state of fall. That's basically all it is. At the end, you might bring the feet together and do a backwards roll or something so that you can continue the fall. You might connect. Connecting allows people to feel the fall because basically you're just a continuous fall. That's all you want to be focused on, is how do I get down, and then how do I get whatever goes up back down. And that's really the art of teaching cartwheels. Cartwheels are best taught if they're horizontally traveling. You're just connecting cartwheels. It's best taught if they're traveling horizontally. Even if the legs aren't going directly over the top of the body, it's better that they travel horizontally and move their body. And then over time, it will go more vertical, and the legs and hips will kind of go more over the head and the shoulders. Now you can see the red. It's not really a stop sign, but it's like a no sign. You're not really trying to hit those positions. So you're really trying to go from one shape to the other. You're really trying to fall past those positions and get into a fall again. So you're trying to go from to without stopping or slowing down in the transition shapes. And that's really what just makes connecting cartwheels difficult, because most people want to stay on balance. They don't want to stay off balance. It looks like that's basically it. Cartwheels generally are a floor and beam skill. They transition into round-offs, which become a flight skill. You will use cartwheels on vault just to enter in for your Chenko setup. But I'm just trying to think of other things you need to know about a cartwheel. The hand placement on a cartwheel, we're not doing the crazy T hands right off the bat, so I'm just going to bring this up and add a slide because I think you need to know this. Okay, so I'm just going to make we'll see if there's actually a hand. All right. Perfect. So we have a pair of hands. All right. So what you need to know is hand placement. Okay. So if this is my left hand and this is my right hand, okay, and let's say I'm traveling this way, I would be doing a traveling that way, and that was my hand placement. I would be doing a left-sided cartwheel. So I'm doing a left-sided cartwheel. This is the first hand that's going down, so that's the left side of your body touching the ground first, and then this is the right side of the body, so left-sided cartwheel. Okay, so this is how you need to place your hands on the ground. You can, at some point in time, do this placement, Okay, you can at some point in time do this placement, and that overturns the body and helps it push. But the concept in this is really for beam and squaring the hips up. It's not actually to generate more power. The hand placement does not really help you. What's more important is what the legs and the hips are doing and how you're actually not weighting the hands but traveling over them as fast as possible. So this option is more for beam tumbling to square the hips up. And this option is perfectly fine for cartwheels, just learning how to cartwheel. And same thing with round-offs. But I just want to be clear on what the hand placement. Basically, just keep the hands faced like this. Simple. Don't start turning any hands or doing funniness. That doesn't really need to exist until later, and really doesn't even need to exist on a beam until you're getting into round-offs. But you can just stay in this land at the basic levels. So if people are telling you to do this hand placement, just chill out. You don't need to do it and worry about it. It's not that important, and it's just going to confuse the kids more, and it requires more technique, and they're focused on the wrong thing, which is their hands. They don't need to be focused on their hands. They should be focused on kicking their legs and moving their center of mass. So there you have it. That is cartwheels and weight transfers. If you have questions, as always, go find somebody and ask lots of questions and pull out all the information out of their brain. Bye.